Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Full house tonight, talking AL and NL East. Corey Jason, Ben Mandel, Dylan Mel, John Pauline here for the Outsider Sports crew. Let's jump right in because we got some big free agent movement here. We've been talking for the last few weeks. Blake Snell finally off the board. Seems like forever. He goes to the Giants. 2 years, 62 million, 31 AAV. He has an opt out after this year. But after turning down 150 million from the Yankees to just get 62 over 2 years, was this really a smart move for him? I don't think he'll ever recoup that 150.
Here's my thing on it. Uh, Similar deal to Bellinger, obviously, the Scott Board special this offseason. My thing is Blake Snell has been a Cy Young twice. Cody Bellinger, the thought was, what's he going to be? Can he do it again? Blake Snell has kind of been consistently good, at least, with two great seasons. If he was to go and say have another Cy Young caliber year, what's the contract offer going to look like for him? Probably exactly like the one the Yankees offered him this offseason. I just don't see it going up for him, whereas for Bellinger, betting on himself can actually result in a huge payday.
I don't know. It's just tough because Snell's numbers last year, while they were Cy Young worthy, it was a down year in both leagues for the Cy Youngs. And honestly, his walk rate was disgusting. It was
Yeah,
awful.
led the MLB in walks.
So like he had a Cy Young year, but like it didn't feel like he was a Cy Young pitcher. He just happened to be the best of a mid league. You know what I mean? So I don't think his numbers go up. I think he's kind of in the same boat because this was his market coming off of a Cy Young. Now, next year, he won't likely be coming off of a Cy Young. He'll be another year older. I think he opts into that next year with the Giants if he doesn't have a great year and just gets that 62 million and tries to be a journeyman after that at 30 whatever years old.
Yeah, that's something too. He's on the wrong side of 30 to be trying to bank on getting a long-term deal in the future.
We do though have some other free agents. Jordan Montgomery, JD Martinez, not on rosters. And then Trevor Bauer in the news. He pitched against the Dodgers recently, announced he's going to be pitching against the Yankees for a team in Mexico, has a couple starts lined up with them. He's a real life Kenny Powers, just making his way, trying to get a comeback going. Somebody should take a flyer on him, I think, eventually. He's doing that whole, media transit, just getting everything out there, trying to make good with everybody. Eventually, he's a Cy Young winner,
It,
right?
it should be the Yankees. I mean, we could
It
talk
should
about
be.
Bauer to the Yankees now or when we talk about them, but
He doesn't have
I,
to pitch with Cole either. Cole's shelved for a couple months.
well, yeah, but the thing is, the reason that the Yankees didn't want to give Snell that contract is because of the tax window. If they were going to give him a
Yeah,
longer term deal, they were going to backload it, but you can't with the short deal. And for those that don't know, the current tax situation for the Yankees is essentially whatever they pay someone, they have to pay double
it would have been
in terms.
96 million instead of 62 if they signed Snell to this same deal.
Yeah, so but Bauer is a guy that you don't have to pay heavy. I
He'll
mean,
take the
Bauer
vet
probably
minimum.
come back for a 1 year, $5 to $10 million deal, I'm sure.
He said he'll take the vet minimum.
Yeah, so and you double that, it's like
I
what? It's
yeah,
worth a flyer for them.
he's just got a lot of bad press around him, and it just sucks because a lot of horrible people have gotten second and third chances. Like I was recently talking to a friend of mine about Domingo Herman, and Herman, beat his wife, suspended, was able to come back, and then he, threatened to off himself during that first suspension, came back, then got belligerently drunk a week after throwing a perfect game, and then was finally kicked out. He had like three chances.
Yeah,
Aroldis Chapman's had how many chances?
and these are players that weren't playing at a high level for New York. You think like
Yeah,
if they're willing to bend the rules of morality for those guys, they'd be willing to do it for Bauer, who,
doesn't make
by
sense.
all intents and purposes, was found innocent.
So we'll have to wait and see on Bauer, but let's get right into the NL East. Last year, 2023, the Braves ran away with the division 104 and 58, followed by the Fightin' Phils 90 and 72, Marlins 84 78, Mets 75 87, Nationals 71 91. Pacoda has the division going a little differently this year, not so much at the top, with the Braves at 101 and 61 per their projections, followed by the Phillies at 84 and 78. Then the Mets in third, 83 79, Marlins 79 83, and the Nationals going 59 and 103. The Nationals, I feel like we talk about one team every week. The Nationals will be up there among the top five worst teams in baseball, I think.
Yeah.
I like their future better than some of the others, though.
I like their future
Yeah.
better than some of the others, but their present is dreadful. But speaking on them, they added outfielder Eddie Rosario, Joey Gallo, Dylan Floro, and Nick Senzel, only losing Dom Smith and Carl Edwards Jr. Didn't really bring anything in, didn't really lose anything. How do we feel about the Nats?
It's a wait and see with some of the young guys. CJ Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, even a Josiah Gray, Joey Meneses. What do you got? I mean, it's just open season for those guys. Do what you could do, prove that you're here for the long term. Obviously you play every game like you want to win, but there's not really winning expectations.
Yeah, I
Next up,
mean,
we
for the national, sorry, I was going to say for the Nationals, like Dylan said, there's a lot of young guys: C.J. Abrams, Caber Ruiz, Jesse Winker, someone who maybe could be a big time player for them. Joey Gallo, we'll see if he can bring it back. Patrick Corbin had a sneaky, solid season last year. If he can duplicate it, Josiah Gray and Mackenzie Gore can take the next step. Washington can be like what Miami was last year, and that's a real thorn in the side. I don't see them as a true contender, but definitely a team that can compete and be more competitive than they were last year. They showed that last year, even down the stretch, as they were winning games a lot of people didn't think they should.
Next up, we got the Marlins. They added shortstop Tim Anderson, Trey Mancini on a minor league deal. They traded for Nick Gordon, Christian Bethencourt, Vidal Brujan, but they lost Jacob Stallings, the catcher, Yuli Gurriel, David Robertson, Joey Wendell, Johnny Cueto, Matt Barnes, Jorge Soler, and Jordan Groshans. The Marlins are a team that their future is always murky because as soon as they get a semblance of a good team, they just break it down. So I really don't know what to make of them. They really need a big bounce back year from Sandy Alcantara, who's one of my all-time favorite pitchers in baseball today. I just need to see him be able to function with the pitch clock.
I'm so out on the Marlins this year. For me, they had their time. They made the postseason last year. I don't see them getting back this year. I have some questions about consistency in terms of production in the lineup and in the pitching rotation now. I'm not bought into this team, especially in a stacked NL East.
Yeah, I really agree there. I think the Marlins do take a step back. I think that the Marlins spent a lot of money heading into last year, and everyone thought this is a nice stepping stone to compete with the likes of the NL East. Instead, they let a lot of pieces go. They don't bring a lot of big pieces in. I think pitching wise, they're still counting on young guys to pan out. I think Luzardo's really good. I think maybe Sixto Sanchez can take the jump and be a good starter this year, but even that's asking a lot, it feels like. Tim Anderson is a reach. Jazz Chisholm is hurt all the time. I'm just not exactly sure how high the ceiling is for the Marlins.
I mean, they definitely did take a step back from last year, and I think last year, I think they even overachieved overachieved than what they were expected to do. But I mean, I still think they have good, solid pitching to go off of. I don't think it's like that horrendous compared to some other, you know, pitching in from other teams around the league. I mean, I still think they're clearly better than the Nationals. And I mean, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I don't think they're going to be bad by any means.
You knew what direction this team really wanted to go when they got rid of Kim Ung, who I thought was a fantastic general manager. Now we'll go to the Braves. The Braves, possibly the best team in baseball. Their lineup is murderous. They added Adam Duvall back, Luis Guillorme, Reynaldo Lopez, Chris Sale, who's a sneaky Cy Young candidate, David Fletcher, Jared Kelnick, Aaron Bummer. So the Braves got better, and they lost Yanni Chirinos, Kevin Pillar, Kirby Yates, Colin McHugh, Eddie Rosario, Brad Hand, Mike Soroka, Vaughn Grissom, Kyle Wright, Nicky Lopez. They lost a lot of tertiary guys. Nobody from their core, nobody that'll really make this team good and great. And they brought in a lot of high upside guys, Kelnick, Sale, just guys that will really perform. Reynaldo Lopez is a great reliever. I think this Braves team could even be better than last year if everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
gonna tell you. I'm sorry, Dylan. I'm just gonna
No,
say
good.
right now, every single Mets fan knows that Jared Kelnick is going to explode for the Atlanta Braves. It's like it's not even a question. It's excuse me. The Mets fans knew Kelnick was going to be good as soon as they traded him away for Edwin Diaz. Now that he is in the division and on your most hated rival, he's going to have a Hall of Fame career, it feels like. Like, that's just what happens to the Mets and to Mets fans. So, look, even without Jared Kelnick having a career year, the Braves are one of the best teams. Sean Murphy is fantastic. One of the best offensive catchers in the game, I think. Definitely top 5, in my opinion. He's hitting 7th in their lineup. This is a stacked lineup. It's loaded, tons of power. You're not going to be able to get around anybody.
Yeah, as long as the Braves don't run into the Phillies in the postseason, they should be smooth sailing at this point. And I know a lot of people will see the Eagles flag behind me, and if they're first-time viewers, I'm a Yankees fan, so I have no dog in that fight. Acuna very well could be MVP. Strider very well could be Cy Young. The Braves, with Ohtani not pitching this year, in my opinion, are the best team, top to bottom, on paper in the NL. But it feels like I've said that at least one of the last 2 seasons. They won that World Series a couple years ago, and it felt like their team got better, yet they produced worse in the postseason. This team seems to have a problem with expectations. We know what they're going to be in the regular season, but like we said with the Dodgers, wins in the regular season don't matter for this team. It's what can you do for me when the fall classic baseball starts.
Nothing more to really say. I mean, I think it's almost clear cut that the Braves are the best team in baseball.
Well, if you got nothing to say about the
I
Braves,
mean, I can't really say they're a
why
good
don't we go to the
team.
Phillies then to give you something to talk about,
I have a
John?
lot to say about them.
So the Phillies, they added in Whit Merrifield, Spencer Turnbull, Kobe Allard, Aaron Nola they got on an extension as he hit free agency. And they also gave Zach Wheeler a 3-year extension. A lot of people thought he was going to hit the market, possibly return to the Mets, but it wasn't meant to be. They lost Craig Kimbrell, which is really addition by subtraction. Michael Lorenzen, Rhys Hoskins, Scott Kingery, who I know many Philly fans absolutely adore. John, give us all some insight in how this Philly season is going to go.
I mean, I'm looking at it, and I don't think, a lot of the signings they made in the offseason was just re-signing players to lock them up for future, in the future, so I don't have to worry about it. But Whit Merrifield's a very good, I think, really, really good. He could be a utility guy, and obviously, recent years the Phillies have had injury problems in the outfield there with Marsh and people getting hurt and stuff. So it's like, it's nice to have another guy to plug in there, especially I think with Cave, and I think it's Pash. I think they're out of minor league options now, so only one of them is going to make up there. So it's like nice to have another guy there. But I think the team's better. They're going into the season. This is probably one of the years where it's like no one's really hurt. They should have, knock on wood, everyone, opening day. So you're going in. You have like Nola's healthy, Wheeler's healthy, Suarez is healthy. Harper's healthy. He had some back stiffness today, but that's nothing in spring training. But you have Harper moving into the first base, now, and I think, their lineups can be really balanced now, even though, They don't have Hoskins anymore. I mean, they did pretty good without him last season, but I mean, they're going to come out of the gate. I think Turner, is through his struggles now, and I think going and I think just him missing spring training for the WBC, I think hurt him, and I think it hurt Schwarber and Remuto because I think my thing is I think it hurt them missing that, and they kind of went a little too hard there, and then you come in and you kind of in a flunk and have to kind of get used to the hitting like batting with the pitch clock and all that stuff. But I think they're looking good. I mean, I'm happy where they are. I mean, I think personally, I think they can be good enough. I mean, I think they're gonna make it a lot closer for the Braves this year. Make the Braves work to actually come in first place in the NL East. I don't think it's going to be a clear, runaway this year, but I think they're going to, at least make it close early on.
Yeah, John. Corey, you said Pagonia had them at 84 wins in their simulations.
Dakota had them at 84 and 78, second in the division.
That feels really low to me. And I double checked. The Vegas line is 89.5. So that, I mean, is a substantial decrease. Because I'm not going to lie, as soon as you said that, I was like, if their line's at 84.5, I'm going to go bet the over right now. I literally opened it up. I was like, I'm going to go bet this. Because like John said, I mean, what went wrong for the Phillies at the start of last year was all that could go wrong in the lineup. Harper hurt. Turner really struggled. Hoskins out, finding roles for these guys and where they're comfortable batting. Now, Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Realmuto, Bryson Stott really came on in the second half of last year. Alec Boehm as well. Castellanos in your 7-hole. We talked about the Braves with a loaded lineup. The Phillies got one too. The question does come after Wheeler and Nola. Who can you depend on in this rotation? But I agree with John that this team will be closer to the Braves than the expectation given by a lot of people.
I agree. I think Philadelphia rotation wise, it's actually slept on a little bit. I think that, you're going to talk a lot about Wheeler and Nola at the top, but when you look at Ranger Suarez and what he's done, he's someone who is fantastic, high velocity guy. He's very much becoming the future of this rotation. Taijuan Walker's a solid back end of the rotation guy at this point of his career. He's going to eat innings. He's been able to stay healthy the last 3 years, which is most important for him. And I think Christopher Sanchez was great in the second half of the season last year for Philadelphia. I think that's a great piece to have at the back end of the rotation. But the guy who I really do like them bringing in, because I know it's not a expensive piece, but it's someone who I think actually will help them, and that's Christian Pache. This is a very cheap young guy that I guess Oakland had enough of. They cut him loose. He's someone who came over in the Matt Olson trade from the Braves. So Philadelphia able to get their version of that of Jared Kelenic. So hopefully, Christian Pache, he's someone who's going to sit on the bench, but he can provide some more defense. They don't have any defense over there in Philadelphia, so they can provide more defense. And, if the bat wakes up for him in a hitter's ballpark, I think it could be very beneficial.
He actually was batting pretty well last season before he got hurt. Like, he's actually starting to, break out, and then he got hurt, and then that was the end of it.
All right, now let's go on to the Metropolitans to wrap up the NL East. The Mets, after a down year last year, they added Jake Diekman, the reliever, Shintaro Fujinami, bolstering that bullpen there. Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, some starters there. Harrison Bader, Joey Wendell, and then they also traded for Adrian Hauser. I think Severino and Hauser are two underrated signings for them, or additions really, because Severino just had an injury issue, then a confidence issue. The talent's always been there. Hauser is underrated. I think he's going to be possibly the best pitcher on the Mets this year, outside of their ace that's hurt. You know what I mean? Now they also lost Daniel Vogelback, Luis Guillorme, and Carlos Carrasco. So they didn't really lose much.
Another addition by subtraction I see in the NL East.
All three of those are just guys that they opted to cut loose.
Ben, it's okay you're broken up about Vogelback being gone. It's fine.
Danny Burgers.
It is what it is. Now, 1 year ago, we sat here And Corey tried his best to maim me for saying that Jose Quintana was a solid depth piece to have in the rotation. And John, you were laughing because you remember this.
And I was right.
No,
He's
you weren't.
garbage.
He was solid for them. He
Garbage.
was good.
Now he's the
This is when
ace.
this is when I was saying that the Mets were looking to compete. Now, when I see, I don't expect the Mets to compete this year. I don't think that they're a playoff team. But I mean, you look at what they throw out there in their rotation. It's all a bunch of back end of the rotation guys. I think Hauser has some potential. I think Manaea is a guy who you're lucky if you get 5 innings out of each start at this point in his career. I mean, I hope Tyler McGill can be good. I hope David Peterson and Kodai Senga can come back and be solid pieces. But in reality, the Mets are going to live and die by the lineup. And I think the lineup isn't bad as long as Harrison Bader can stay healthy, which he can't. Alvarez is going to have to take that next step this year. They need either one of the two, either Brett Beatty or Mark Vientos to decide they are going to be the future at third base of this organization. Again, if neither of those two are, it's another example of why the Mets need to rebuild and move on, because at this point, those are two of your best prospects. Both of them play the same position. One of them has to hit. And really, that's what the Mets season is going to come down to, is if the young guys can step up, if the pitching can be good enough. I don't think that you're going to get a yes for both of those, which is what they would need.
Yeah, I look at the Mets the same way that I look at the San Francisco Giants, and it's not in terms of team build, but in terms of what I'm looking at in an opponent. A team that I don't really view as a lock playoff team, but a team that I probably don't want to be playing at the end of the year because that lineup can still kill you. Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, Alvarez, McNeil, Marte. That's a really solid lineup. The question comes at pitching, but again, it feels like they're playing with house money with no expectations this year. You have a bunch of scratch off tickets at pitchers. One, two of them hit, great. The other ones don't. Cut them loose at the end of the year and move on. The Mets are in
Say
a
two of them hit. Two of them hit. They're going to be trade deadline acquisitions for other teams.
Absolutely
maybe,
not,
but
because
the
if they
Mets-
hit, the Mets are in position to make the playoffs, and the Mets will make the playoffs and go for it.
The Mets are in a
They will
no-lose
not have
situation
enough.
here, though. When there's no expectations, you could win no matter what if the glass is half full.
I truly believe the Mets are going to be a playoff team, whether it's the 6th or 7th wild card. I don't know, but they will be a playoff team. But let's go right in. Before we go into the AL East, actually, let's try to figure out how this division is going to shake out. So I'm going to name what I think it is, going from worst to first, and you guys tell me if you agree or disagree. Last place, I think we can all agree that the Nationals will be a last place team.
Yep.
Yep.
Marlins,
I do not
fourth
agree.
place. You don't agree.
I think the Marlins and Nationals flip. I think it's going to be.
Okay.
I think my order is Braves, Phillies, Mets, Nationals, Marlins.
And John, Dylan, you guys agree. Nats last, and then Marlins in fourth, followed
Yep.
by the Mets in third,
I
Phillies
have the
and
Mets
Braves in
fourth.
first. Oh, you have the Mets fourth,
Yeah.
and
I
you
have-
have the Marlins in third.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. We have the same order, Corey.
It must be the outside looking in type of
Yeah,
mindset on this division.
that's the way the NL East is going to play out. If you guys want to know how the AL East is going to play out, listen to Ben and John.
So let's start off last year, the AL East. Shocking year all around. Orioles,
I
who
knew the
we all
Orioles.
thought before the
I knew.
season, John knew especially, but we all talked how the Orioles were going to be, at least I did. I talked about the Orioles being a year away from being a year away. I thought they were going to be like a year away this year, where next year was going to be that massive blow up year, guys getting into the beginnings of their prime, getting everybody up. I didn't think we'd see Jackson Holiday this soon, but the Orioles came last year. They had a 101-61 record. followed by the Rays, 99 and 63. The Rays, who always seem to play well in spite of everything going on. Then the Blue Jays at 89 and 73. Yankees keeping that streak alive. The worst season the Yankees have had in 30 years at 82 and 80. Followed by the Red Sox in last place, 78 and 84. Top to bottom, that is a solid records of divisions worth. Just worst team at 78 wins. That's pretty incredible. Pacoda has the Yankees winning the division, and this is updated as of March 16th. It's only a couple days. This takes into account that Garrett Cole news has the Yankees winning at 92 and 70, followed by the Blue Jays 88 and 74, the Rays 87-75, the Orioles 87-75, and then the Red Sox at 79 and 83. So still a really tight matchup there between 1 and 5. Personally, I think the Red Sox and the Blue Jays are the by far two worst teams in the division, and I don't think it's close. I absolutely hate how the Blue Jays are constructed. They just will not be a successful team. And then the Rays and the Orioles will always be good, and the Yankees are a wild card. But let's go into the reigning division champion Orioles. They added Craig Kimbrell, Matt Crook, Nick Maton, and they traded for Corbin Burns. They lost Kyle Gibson, Aaron Hicks, Adam Frazier, Jack Flaherty, Shintaro Fujinami, and DL Hall. The Orioles aren't getting better through free agency. They did trade for Burns, who they really needed to, but also their whole thing is going to be about bringing up the young kids. Kowser, Holiday, they have Rutschman. All these guys are going to be massive players. And if we get any sophomore slumps or just rough freshman years, like we saw from Grayson Rodriguez last year, the Orioles will take a big step back. But if they can maintain pace, they're going to be a really, really good team.
Yeah, I'm not getting high on the Orioles supply again this year. A lot of one-run games for this team last year. And an important note, they go from perhaps the best closer in baseball to Craig Kimbrell. I mean, that could flip a lot of those one-run games. And you mentioned it, sophomore slumps. Is Gunnar Henderson going to take a step forward, a step backward? Same with Grayson Rodriguez. Is Jackson Holiday ready for the MLB just because he's mashing in spring training? Is he ready for a full 162? Even if he plays well, the durability over a season that long, we see it catches up to young guys sometimes. Is Cedric Mullins, Adley Rutschman, Santander? You don't hear all those names besides Rutschman and go, that's a star. They could play like a star, but it's just, I don't know. And then the Milwaukee Brewers, they know pitching. They were willing to move off of Burns. Do they know something that we don't? Is a little decline come? I don't know. I was in on the Orioles, but it was one of those things where it's like, everybody's in on them. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Look, with the Orioles, this is what's really, really interesting to look at. When you look at their starting lineup and really all their position players that are expected to make the active roster, all but 5 of them were drafted by the Baltimore Orioles or were signed with the Orioles as their first organization. One of them is Anthony Santander, who was a Rule 5 pick in 2016. All of this is homegrown talent in Baltimore, and to your guys' credit, they weren't boosting it up through free agency like they needed to. You've built the core. You now need to add more pieces. I think Baltimore takes a step back this year because I think they didn't do enough. I think Rodriguez has a good year. I think Kramer has a good year, but they don't have enough pitching. And I think, losing Bautista for the year is going to be too big to handle.
I disagree. I think they're still going to be good. I mean, they have a good, I like they have a good, solid core. That their core of their team is the young players, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, best catcher in baseball. Like you have, the rookie year, Gunnar Henderson. You have Jackson Holly's going to come up, and he's going to he's probably running for rookie of the year. I mean, you have this solid core thing, and that's what's going to win you. I think that you're going to rely heavily on them to win the games, and I think they can win you the games. And it's like you're talking about a lot of one-run games and stuff, and it's like that's how it is. But the good teams win those one-run games, and I mean, you added Kimbrel and stuff in there and stuff, and he wasn't the best,
He might have
but
been the worst.
he might have been the worst. But I mean, he didn't do too great for the Phillies in the playoffs last year. But like he wasn't horrendous in the regular season and stuff. And I
Playoffs is
mean,
all that matters, though.
yeah,
I mean,
but
we're talking about regular season right now,
we're
so
talking about regular season. It's not playoffs yet.
It's
But
always playoff time.
but the point is, I mean, you're talking about they didn't do a lot in free agency like what they needed to do, but they have a lot of these young players coming up through their system and stuff. But I mean, they very easily, when it comes to the trade deadline, they very easily can go out and get people
Yeah.
for team, very easily. I mean, they have the space and they have the guys to give up for it. I mean, so I mean, I think they're
Yeah,
right
but
there.
until they actually go make a move, I'm not gonna have faith
let's see
in
the
the roster
checkbook.
they have. Yeah, you don't know
New
who
ownership,
they're gonna
right?
go and acquire. It really depends on who they bring in too, if you can actually have faith in them.
But let's move on. There's not much we have to say about the Red Sox, to be honest. They added C.J. Cron, Liam Hendricks, Lucas Litke, Michael Fulmer, Lucas Giolito, Tyler O'Neill, Vaughn Grissom. They extended Brian Bello to a 6-year, $55 million deal. They lost James Paxton, Adam Duvall, Corey Kluber, Justin Turner. They traded away Chris Sale and Alex Verdugo. The Red Sox stink.
They don't
It
have
would
the
have been a
depth.
crazy offseason, crazy haul coming in and coming out if this was 5 years ago.
They don't have the
Honestly, though,
depth at pitching or batting to keep up with this stacked division.
the Red Sox
Don't
are
sleep on
many, many
Tyler
years away.
O'Neill. That's a quiet acquisition there. Tyler O'Neill.
You're right. I
Don't
like
sleep
O'Neill
on
from the
him.
Cardinals. I just think that there's way too many issues with the Red Sox, and they need a lot of guys like Jaron Duran and Tristan Cassis to really blossom.
It
But
all started with them,
yeah,
getting rid of Christian Arroyo. It all started with that.
it did. Blue Jays, a team I'm very, very low on. They added Joey Votto, Yariel Rodriguez, Justin Turner, and IKF. They lost Adam Simber, Brandon Belt, Hyunjin Ryu, Matt Chapman, Jordan Hicks, and Whit Merrifield. Just the way that the Blue Jays are rostered, and just Vladdy and Bichette, and I just don't like their team. They're not good, and they have a mentality like they're the Braves. It just doesn't make sense. They're a fourth place team. I don't think they're very good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
fully agree. I mean, like they have a really solid lineup and decent depth at pitching. I I think that this could very well be a playoff team. Now, mentality is something that we could talk about because I think mentally they're a weak team and they're not well managed in terms of that. But I don't know, man. I'm not as out on their lineup and team as
Their
a whole
window,
as you are.
to me, their window closed 2 years ago, and it's not even close to opening.
I don't look. I think you struggle with guys like George Springer. You hope that he can actually, produce and have a year that, is equivalent to what he's getting paid. I just don't love the rotation. I think that, you had a good bounce back year last year from Barrios, but a guy like Chris Bassett, he's getting up there in age. He's 35. He's thrown so many innings. You saw the wear and tear starting to get to him as well. I think Kevin Gaussman is another guy who, I'll be honest with you, I don't think is that good, and I think is overachieved for a couple of years in a row now. And eventually the other shoe is going to drop on him. This year has got to be the year where the other shoe drops because he can't be as consistent as he's been the last few years and not be good, as I have been saying. So in order for that to actually come true, I think Osman has to take a step back. I think the lineup is still solid. You know, IKF, I don't love the fact that that's who they replaced Matt Chapman with, but in all honesty, Matt Chapman's not the biggest offensive juggernaut. I think that Dalton Varsho bounces back and has a better year this year. I think Alejandro Kirk has a bigger year this year. And look out for Bo Bichette to just really, really have a big year, because if Toronto is going to go places, it's because Bo Bichette has an MVP season, not MVP caliber, an MVP season.
Agreed.
Now we have the Rays. They added Ahmed Rosario, Phil Maton, and Ryan Pepe up from the Dodgers. They lost Jake Diekman, Robert Stevenson, Andrew Kitteridge, Luke Raley, Vidal Brujan, Tyler Glasnow to the Dodgers, Manuel Margot. Plus, you have that whole Wander Franco saga going on that we just don't know much about. But the Rays always find a way. They just
Rays are gonna
find a way.
raise, man. You look at the team and it looks underwhelming on paper every damn season,
But they're always
and
there.
then they're always 90 plus wins every damn season.
Zach Eflin Cy Young season incoming. That's the
Oh,
only
boy.
way the Rays. It's the only way the Rays are able to stay afloat. They like. I don't get it how they can continue just turning through pitchers like this. I think this is where we see the Rays take a dip for a year or two before they finally retool their system and get back into it in a couple of years. I think there's no way.
They're one of those teams that's just really good, but there's just not much to say about them because, like, they just have no names come up and show out. So let's go to the Yankees. They added Marcus Stroman, Cody Poteet, Lou Trevino, Nick Burdi, Trent Grisham, Luke Weaver, Alex Verdugo, and Juan Soto. But they lost Domingo Herman, Frankie Montas, Wandy Peralta, Luis Severino, IKF, Kyle Higashioka, Michael King, Johnny Brito, and Randy Vasquez. It's a mouthful. They lost their pitching depth. So the Yankees are a team that's a big question mark, especially with Cole out for like a month or two, and even then some.
Yeah, I had questions about the 5 before the Cole injury. Now I got questions about the 4 and the 5. Cole should be back by June, and the lineup can definitely stay afloat. It's the best lineup overall in the AL. They have the top 2 odds-on favorites for MVP in Soto and Judge. I expect Judge to play opening day. Really, though, the team, it's full of the question marks. Will Stanton be back to Stanton? Will DJ be back to DJ? Can Carlos Rodon be the Cy Young player he was 2 years ago, or is he just going to be the 7 ERA guy he was last year? Stroman, Cortez, those were really good 3-4. Are they going to have to be 1-2? That's a lot to ask while Cole is out. A lot of question marks in New York.
Yeah, look, the Yankees have questions, but I think they did a good enough job bringing in some depth pieces for the rotation. I think that Luke Weaver is sneaky. He's someone that is going to eat some innings. He'll live in their bullpen. While Cole's out, he's going to help keep that rotation afloat. Yankees are winning this division by far, in my opinion. I think they are easily the team that had the best offseason in terms of what they lost and what they gained.
I think the biggest question for the Yankees, though, is can they stay healthy?
Yeah, and that's
Because it's
always the
been
question. To me, the Yankees are the third place team in the division. We'll get into our predictions for them next week because I have a big question I want to ask about this division. But that's going to do it here. Next week, we're going to talk awards. But that's going to do it here for the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Corey Jason, Ben Mandel, Dylan Mel, John Pauline, signing off.